Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a big one, a really big one. It's a theory that argues the reality you experience every single day is nothing more than a projection from a hidden spiritual engine inside your own mind. So let's just start with that question. What if your reality is just a projection? We're going to dive into a fascinating and pretty dense text by Darius Marcus that presents this super radical theory of consciousness. It proposes that the world you see isn't the real world at all, but more like a limited broadcast that's playing only inside your head.
Okay, so to even begin to unpack this, we have to start with the author's blueprint for the mind itself. I mean, how does he believe it actually works? The author calls this whole system Philognosy, which basically translates to the love of knowledge. But, it's a very specific kind of knowledge. It's one that frames the human mind not as some passive window looking out at reality, but as a limited, active projector that's creating the only reality we can ever know.
According to this theory, each of us is what he calls a summator, a synthesizer of information. So we're essentially living in a mental version of Plato's cave, experiencing this filtered, kind of secondhand reality that's built only from the signals our body happens to collect.
And here's where it gets kind of wild. The author tries to capture this entire complex system in a single, dense formula. He presents this as the literal code for your consciousness, mapping out all the hidden forces that shape who you are.
All right, let's try to decode this thing. P is our physical body, the hardware gathering all the data. S is the summator. That's our inner reality where that data becomes real to us. But the most mysterious part here is JL, the black flame, which is described as a kind of transcendental power source that's driving the whole system.
So yeah, that last piece of the puzzle, the black flame, is definitely the most enigmatic. So what exactly is it, and where does this whole idea even come from?
Well, the text defines the black flame as our immortal spiritual core. It's the engine that projects our reality but exists outside of it. It's the true self that's just operating the biological machine we call our body.
The author actually bases this concept on a deeply personal experience. He describes waking up and witnessing his dream literally collapse into a flame bird before it just vanished. And he interprets this as a rare glimpse of his higher transcendental self, the black flame, manifesting right at the very edge of consciousness.
This brings up a pretty profound question. If our body is just a temporary machine, what happens to the black flame when it breaks down? The theory suggests our essence might not just disappear, but, perhaps it reintegrates into some kind of universal, divine spirit.
So once you accept this model of the mind, the author argues that humanity is standing at a major crossroads. We're facing a monumental choice between two competing destinies.
And here's the core conflict. On one side, you have the Church of God, which is inspired by the philosopher A. Schleiermacher. This path champions our natural, authentic state. On the other side, you have the Church of Satan, inspired by Nietzsche, which seeks to transcend nature entirely through technology.
Now, this technological path, from his perspective, has a pretty dark foundation. It's centered on what he calls psychotronics, and these are technologies designed for direct brain manipulation, capable of monitoring thoughts and controlling behavior.
He claims this can lead to what he calls a collective killer, a system that uses these technologies to sabotage targeted individuals. The goal here is to create a loser matrix around them, making them appear unstable or paranoid to everyone else.
So, if this technological path is presented as being so perilous, what's the ultimate promised reward? What's the grand prize at the end of this journey?
The ultimate goal of the Church of Satan, according to the text, is to evolve humanity from its current limited state into what is called a white dragon, a godlike being with total, complete knowledge of reality.
And this isn't just some vague goal. The author lays out a literal path of ascension, almost like a ladder of consciousness, moving from an ordinary citizen all the way up to this cosmic, godlike being.
The author argues that right now, we all exist as black dragons. And you can think of it like this. It's like we're trying to see the entire universe by looking through a tiny keyhole. Our small inner world, what he calls MS, defines our perception of the vast reality outside, or DS. So in his formula, MS equals DS.
The white dragon, though, flips this equation completely on its head.
It's ds equals ms. It achieves a state where the totality of reality, the big sieve, or ds, is perfectly contained and understood within its own consciousness, the ms. The keyhole is gone. The whole universe is inside. And the prize for achieving this state? Well, according to the text, it's everything. A cosmic civilization, full knowledge of reality's hidden laws, unlocking fantastical tech like anti-gravity and teleportation. Humanity would, effectively, ascend to the level of gods. So it all really comes down to this fundamental choice. You have the path of being, which is accepting our nature, versus the path of becoming, chasing this incredible but, pretty perilous technological ambition.
To put it as simply as possible, what do we choose? Do we find meaning inside our biological cave, just accepting our natural limits? Or do we risk everything, our freedom, maybe even our very soul, for a chance to become divine?
Now, the author doesn't give us an easy answer. Instead, he just leaves us with this question asking, is our relentless progress building a stairway to the stars, or are we just constructing the walls of a technological hell? And that forces us to look at the world around us and ask ourselves, as our society accelerates, which path are we actually choosing? According to this theory, the choice is still ours, but it might not be for long.